Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty show and tonight's Week 15 recap of Week 1 of your fantasy football playoffs. That's right, we are recapping what happened to your players, hot or cold, in Week 1 of the quarterfinals of your fantasy playoffs. We've got some NBA action with the Cup Finals tonight with the Bucks and the Thunder. Bucks are leading right now by 4. Some exciting action there, and we've got more action for you right now. That's right. Just announced that Kirk Cousins has been benched for Michael Penix, who takes over for the Falcons after last night's game. Obviously, head coach Raheem Mostert was not impressed. And so the 112-yard, one touchdown, one interception performance from Cousins gets him benched. They barely squeaked out a victory over the Raiders last night. And it is Penix time. What does that mean for your Falcons? Teammates of Penix. Well, honestly, I don't see how anything can get worse. I mean, Cousins had a 1 touchdown to 9 interception ratio over the last 5 weeks, where the Falcons went 1-4. They snapped that 4 game winning streak last night, barely, against the woeful Las Vegas Raiders, who were doing everything possible to lose, and they did so. But yeah, it is Penix time, and I don't see how anything could get worse, honestly. So still fire up your Drake Londons and Darnell Mooney's in the flex. Michael or Kyle Pitts if you've gotta start him. Um, and of course, Bijan on the ground still will be toting the rock plenty for the Falcons. All right. Next up, we want to get into some injuries, and let's just rattle off the injury report for you. And started it right off with Patrick Mahomes and his high ankle sprain. That's right. He's considered week to week now. This is something that Mahomes has played with in the past, so don't be surprised if he plays with it again this Saturday. That's right. They have one less day for recovery as well. And so Chiefs are taking on the geez, I already forgot who they were playing. Let me bring up the schedule for next week here. There, there we go. All right. So the Chiefs are at home to the Texans, who have an interesting defense, one that's been up and down this year. They've played poorly, but gotten a ton of interceptions. They've gotten after the quarterback and dominated it from time to time. But we'll see this week what they pull off against possibly Carson Wentz for the Chiefs. What does that mean for your Chiefs players? Well, honestly, if you were starting any Chiefs wide receivers, you were in trouble unless this is best ball. So, um, yeah, I'd probably steer away from them. Now, of course, I say that, and Mahomes will come in and play anyway and throw for 4 touchdowns. But I would expect to see more Pacheco, maybe a little of Kareem Hunt mixed in, but they've seemed to slowly be ramping up Pacheco's workload. And so I would still start Pacheco with confidence. Now, from the Houston side of things, this definitely brightens their prospects of winning this matchup. Big matchup for them, seating wise, as the Texans stand right now. They are the 4th seed, but they're just a game behind the Steelers, and the Steelers are traveling to Baltimore for a big game as well. And so that one's going to be, yeah, right after the Chiefs Texans game on Saturday. So we've got the Thursday night game, Broncos Chargers, Then Texans, Chiefs, then Steelers, Ravens, both on Saturday. So a lot of AFC action going on early in week 16, your semifinals of your fantasy playoffs. Yes. So I would I would start Joe Mixon with confidence, regardless. But I don't know that it changes much really at all for the Texans. If you're borderline starting the Texans D, give them a little bump. I would say more likely to get a few more sacks with Mahomes's injury, or with Carson Wentz behind the behind center. Yeah, I mean between Juju and Justin Watson and whatever else the Chiefs are able to throw out right now, I'd still start Kelsey either way. So I don't think it changes much for him. Noah Gray is still a fringe starter, especially at tight end where, if you got somebody like Kyle Pitts who's been up and down. Now, Pitts had a decent game this last week. Um, Pitts went we'll get into it more. I mean, he had 4 catches for 28 yards, so not really anything special, but when the quarterback only throws for 112 yards and you had 28 of them, I guess that's okay. Not really what we're looking for. So, honestly, yeah, I it's like 50-50 if I would start Noah Gray or Kyle Pitts, ironically. Um, but yeah, to more of the injuries, we've got another monster in Alvin Kamara going down, and so he's going to be out for sure. And it looks like it'll be the Kendre Miller show. Miller's been getting more action as of late, and so yeah, if you've got Kendre Miller, don't be afraid to fire him up this week. The Saints are taking on the Packers in Lambeau, so um, you know if you need a volume play at running back, yes, Miller can fill that void. If you're looking for a locked and loaded RB1, well, I don't know. He doesn't quite have the receiving chops that Kamara had. So, uh, yeah, it's going to be hard to see how valuable those touches will be with the Saints offense. Geno Smith having trouble with his knee. Sat out the whole fourth quarter of the game against Green Bay on Sunday night. And so that could take a hit for the Seattle receivers. Now, we know that Sam Howell loves to sling it. So don't be afraid picking up Sam Howell or Carson Wentz. I would probably lean more towards Wentz just because I think there's a better chance Wentz plays. It's actually probably pretty close for either of them. Now, with Howell slinging it, I mean, if I knew both were playing, I'd probably be more likely to say go ahead and start Howell in spite of how bad he was. They take on the Vikings at home. Vikings have a bad pass defense, so but they have a good defense overall. It's just they like to give up yardage, and so I could see Howell picking up tons of yards. You can start JSN. DK is more borderline, and so it kind of depends on your lineup size and what other options you have. Next up, we have one of the biggest possible injuries, and that is David Montgomery going down for the season with an MCL sprain. And so, ooh, Jameer Gibbs, gotta love it. Yes, the Lions offense as a whole will probably take a little bit of a hit, but Jameer Gibbs definitely can fill the void for the few weeks in the regular season. Now, once they get into the playoffs, we'll see what develops there. If Simone Baki, that's right, or Craig Reynolds are able to step up and handle a few more touches, but I definitely don't see either of them getting more than 4 or 5 touches, honestly. Um, so yeah, wheels up for Jameer Gibbs. The Lions offense as a whole, as you saw last week, I mean, Goff threw for almost 500 yards. So with their defense taking on all of those injuries, their offense has had to step up and do a lot more. And so that's helped Amon-Ra, Laporta, JMO, all of the even Tim Patrick is now flexible. So I mean, the Lions are going to have to win the game by scoring and scoring and scoring. So this offense is going to, I mean, Jameer Gibbs, honestly, this could be the league winning injury more so than these other guys, which I'm going to get into with the next two. And that would be Tony Pollard and Nick Chubb both going down. That opens the door for Tajay Spears as well as Jerome Ford. Now, both of them will. So Chubb had a broken foot. Pollard is questionable. Chubb is definitely out. So Jerome Ford is for sure. I mean, pick him up if he's available. Most dynasty leagues he's not, but redraft league he might be if it's shallower. Same with Tajay Spears. If somebody didn't grab him last week, he might still be there on your redraft waiver wire. And he had a monster game in just I think he just had 11 touches. So both of them are playable this week. Then at wide receiver, we've got Jalen Waddle with a knee injury and Tyrone, sorry, Xavier Legette with is it a concussion? Let me double check with Legette what it is. Legette is his groin. Sorry. So he's week to week. And that generally we've come to know means that he'll probably be out this week. If it's day to day, he could play this week. When they say week to week, it usually means out for 1 or 2 weeks, right? And so, yeah, Xavier Legette will be out. That opens the door for Jalen Coker, who stepped up last week, had like 90 yards, and Adam Thielen as well to continue his progress with Bryce Young there. And finally, at tight end, we've got Zach Ertz, who suffered a concussion, and Will Dissly, who's out with a shoulder injury. And so if Ertz is out again, that gives Ben Sinnott more snaps. And then if Dissly is out, that means that Stone Smart will continue to see snaps. He had 5 for 50 roughly. We'll check it out when we get into the numbers. I think it was 5 catches on 6 targets. So a decent day for Smart. So he should should continue to see those looks this upcoming week for the Chargers. All right. Next up, we will get into the action from week 15, show you some box scores, and let's get right to it. So we're going to do, who do we want to start off with here? Well, let's just go right down and we'll get it rolling with my boys, Baker and the Buccaneers, who took on the Chargers this last week. And so the Bucks had a favorable schedule heading into their last 6 games following the bye. After they went on a 4-game losing streak, Bucks were sitting at 4-6, and now they've rattled off 4 in a row to take the lead in the NFC South at 8-6, just 1 game ahead of the Falcons, who do hold the tiebreaker with us. But this one, man, it started off, it was 17-10 and 17-13 Chargers, and Chargers did not score again, and it ended up 40-17. Mike Evans with 2 touchdowns in the second half for Big Mike, who continues his quest for an 11th straight 1,000-yard season, which would tie Jerry Rice. That's right, it would tie Jerry Rice all time for most consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. I just, you know, this guy is staying 27 years old forever. I don't know what else I could say about Big Mike. 9 for 159 on 11 targets, 2 touchdowns. Jalen McMillan becoming totally flexible for your lineups. He again went off 5 for 75 and a touchdown on 6 targets. So you can start Evans for sure, and McMillan if you need to. I would not be hesitant at all. And then Bucky Irving and Rashad White sharing the load in the backfield. Bucky getting 117 yards on the ground, had a big 54-yarder in that. Baker, though, big, big game 22 to 27, 288, 4 touchdowns, and 1 pick in the first half, 135 quarterback rating. His counterpart, Justin Herbert, on the other side, just 195 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. No running game whatsoever there. Expect to see Kamani Vidal to continue to see more touches as the Chargers try to figure out what to do in their backfield. They need some kind of spark in their offense. Lad McConkey, 5 for 58 and a touchdown, continues to play well. There's Stone Smart, 5 for 50 on 6 targets. And Quentin Johnston, 5 for 45 with the touchdown. So QJ continuing to be relevant. I will just say that I'm happy to have him in best ball. We'll say that. If you've got him in a lineup league, it all depends how deep you go at wide receiver and what your other options are, whether you want to throw QJ into your lineup or not. All right. Next up, we will dive into the Thursday night game that we did the primer for. And woo-wee, that was not what we were expecting. Oh, just a putrid, rain-soaked performance for the Rams and Niners. Now, because of that downpour through the second and third quarters, it ruined the night for most players fantasy wise. Puka was able to still get like 20 points in most leagues with 7 for 97 and then adding 11 yards on the ground. But Cooper Kupp with the donut, that's rough. Cost a lot of people in their matchups in the quarterfinals. This week, though, they get to take on the Jets, who have been up and down defensively. Of course, they have Sauce Gardner, but that doesn't mean that the other receiver won't be open. And so I expect Stafford to try and bounce back, barring any major rain there in the Meadowlands. So Stafford, I think, should bounce back. I wouldn't be afraid to start him. Kyron Williams did get over 100 yards in grinding those out, just 3.7 yards per carry. But of course, this game was played at a snail's pace with the rain. The Niners, ugh, it was rough. Isaac Guerrero, 57 yards on the ground, added 4 for 18 through the air, so 75 total yards for Guerrero. Again, this one you can't read too much into other than the fact that like Debo struggled still. This would be a game that you would think Debo would not necessarily just dominate, but come up with a big play. All right. We have not seen it from Debo in forever. I find it real hard to start him, but again, it depends on your matchups and who you're going against. If you're an underdog, Debo is a guy who still could blow up any one week. Now the Niners are taking on who they got this week. Yes, they travel to Miami, so should be good weather down there. And I would expect, I don't know, man. I would expect Purdy to definitely bounce back. So I think that Debo should be a little better, but I'd start Juwan Jennings over him right now. Okay. And then Kittle, I wouldn't be afraid of. I mean, he went 4 for 61. I definitely still start Mr. Kittle. All right. Next up, what do we have? Let's see here. we're just gonna go right in order. We've got the Chiefs and Browns, and of course that Mahomes injury talked about at the top. All right, we've got Mahomes going 19 for 38 for a buck 59 and two touchdowns. Ugly, ugly performance, but they got the win. They didn't have to sneak it out with some BS play at the end or whatever. Kareem Hunt actually led the team in rushing this week. So, but the carries were even. As I said, they're ramping up Pacheco. I think they want to kind of save him for the playoffs, but kind of make sure that they get the one seed. So they're playing this little game with us. Um, I'm not starting Pacheco with full confidence, but as your RB2, I don't have a problem with it. Kareem Hunt, on the other hand, I'd be very leery of starting. All right. If we look further down here for the Chiefs, got D Hop at Worthy. Man, if Carson Wentz is running it, I find it real hard to want to start either of these guys. They're both basically flex options at this point, and so it comes down to who you have. If you've got somebody better, I would go with them. But if you have to, you have to. I mean, at this point in the season, it comes a lot of times it just comes down to who you have that's healthy. And so I wouldn't be starting some random, I'm not starting, probably not starting Demarcus Robinson, okay, over either of those two. But I wouldn't blame you if you decided to try them, especially if Wentz is quarterback. So, and then you got Noah Gray there with a touchdown. So he's been getting a little bit of action. It's kind of just the pie is so split up there in Kansas City between Xavier, Hopkins, Juju, Kelsey, Gray. I mean, it's just hard to see. Kelsey's the only one I have a full confidence in starting just because I know he's going to get like 6 to 8 targets at least. With the others, it's hard to say. I mean, Xavier Worthy here had 11 targets, just 6 for 46, though. Did have the touchdown on what you it was a borderline whether it was a pass. So Mahomes could have had 3 touchdowns. He threw it right down the line towards the sideline to Worthy. They decided to call it a running play. So that's why Worthy ended up with 3 for 30. But don't lead too much into that one performance because we've all seen it already. Worthy blew up early in the season. Now he had a decent game this week in week 15. Not anointing him at all. But yeah, I guess if it comes down to it and you have Worthy and D Hop, I guess I'd lean towards Worthy right now. But I couldn't fault you starting either of them, honestly. Now over to the Browns, and they've benched Jameis Winston in favor of Dorian Thompson Robinson. So DTR gets the call this week. The Browns are taking on the Bengals. So this should be, well, if Jameis was playing, this would be a real exciting one. Easily the highest over under of the week. But with DTR in the mix, this is going to be tough to count on Jerry Judy. Judy has been on just an absolute heater lately. He's like a top 5 wide receiver over the last couple months. And so 11 for 108 on 14 targets with Njoku out. He was just force fed by Winston. Now, with Winston not being there, it's hard to say. I don't know that I would bench Judy completely. Again, it comes down to how deep your league is, your starting lineup in a start 10 or 11 or 12. I'd still probably start Judy, but in a start 9 or lower or a smaller redraft, I think I'd probably seek out other options. Now, Jerome Ford, on the other hand, he becomes a decent RB2. He's going to see tons of volume, a lot like what we were seeing from him last year. So now it's time for Jerome Ford to shine. I said that he'd be a top 25 running back this year. And so I don't know that there's enough time for him to pull that off, but he could be a possible league winner for some out there. Just leave it at that. Now, if Njoku plays, you almost have to play him. It depends on who your other tight end options are, but consider other options just because I don't see the passing volume going to be there for DTR. Now, DTR does become a possible super flex option. And so, again, it depends where you're at quarterback. But at this time of year, we got to think defense as well, right? So, look at your matchup, what your opponent has. If they have an injury at quarterback, then you want to go and try and get DTR so they can't. So, check out how much fab they have left, see what you got to do. There's plenty of uh, very middling to bottom options at quarterback this coming week. Like you've got uh, Carson Wentz, uh, possibly Sam Howell. You've got Tommy DeVito, or who would it be? Tim Boyle now. Uh, so, ugh, it's getting ugly, ugly. And you're going to have the Giants traveling to Atlanta. And, the Falcons defense looked pretty spry against the Raiders. Blocked a couple of kicks, got a safety, had a couple interceptions. So Falcons D looking to tee off on the Giants this week. All right, let's head into more action here. We've got the Bengals Titans. That was a fun one. 37-27. Bengals came out on top, and Joe Burrow not slowing down here. 271 through the air, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. He doesn't care. He's slinging it. Start him with full confidence. Chase Brown, 97 on the ground, added 16 through the air, 2 touchdowns. Monster game for Chase. Start him fully with confidence. All the Bengals, just get him in your lineup. Chase and Higgins, both good, solid performances as well. All right. As for the Titans, they have benched Will Levis off of his 89-yard 3-pick performance that we've come to know from the Mayo Man. So Mason Rudolph will step in. He becomes another super flex option that we can throw into the mix. And I don't know. I think that's actually better for Calvin Ridley. Ridley had a couple of nice games with Rudolph at the helm earlier this year. So I would definitely put more consideration into Calvin Ridley this week. As we mentioned now, Tony Pollard did have an all right game, 45 yards on the ground and a touchdown. But the knee injury is very concerning. And so, yeah, I think that Tajay Spears becomes a nice back end number RB2, RB3 type. Again, it just depends on what options you have. The Titans are taking on the Colts, an interesting matchup in Indianapolis, division game. So it could be a tight one. I don't expect a blowout there. But you never know from the Titans, the way this season's been going, they could just mail it in at any point. So these are teams that are very familiar with each other. And so it should be a good game, honestly, even though it's a 3-11 versus a 6-8 team. All right. Next up, let's head over to New Orleans. And we got Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin once again, 2 times this Sunday. Both of Daniels' touchdowns to Terry McLaurin, finished with 226 through the air, added another 66 on the ground. Brian Robinson, 65 on the ground, low yards per carry. I expected a little bit more out of Brian Robinson this week, but he couldn't find the end zone. I would still probably start him with decent confidence. Now they're taking on the Eagles, so this is a huge one. A noon game in Washington. I would look for the Commanders to try and establish Robinson early against this stout Eagles D. So again, he becomes a RB2 option for you, and just comes down to what you've got on your team. And you know, if you have to play him, absolutely, I'd feel fine playing. But if you don't, wouldn't mind having him on the bench this week. Um, as for Zach Ertz, we mentioned earlier the injury, he'll probably be out this week. So again, Ben Sinnott and John Bates will get more looks. I wouldn't be starting Sinnott yet. He's not getting enough snaps. I think it'll probably be a 50-50 type thing there. Um, as for the Saints, Jake Hayner wasn't quite getting it done, so he got benched. Spencer Rattler came in and rallied the troops, got them to 20-19 as they scored right when time expired, and they went for two. Didn't complete the pass to Juwan Johnson, so they tried to win it. More power to the Saints for going for it there. Now, the main thing with the Saints is the Alvin Kamara injury. And so we will see Kendre Miller, not just 9 for 46 this past week, but look for him to get, if the Saints do what they want to do against the Packers, they'll probably establish the run early, but with Spencer Rattler running things, it's kind of hard to say how this one's going to turn out. But I'd be very happy if I was a Packers fan for what's going on in New Orleans there. MVS 2 for 64 for all of you had to stick him in your lineup in the bottom of your flex or got him in best ball. He'll probably still get his opportunities. The Saints like to air it out and throw it downfield a few times a game. So probably the same, no different MVS as we've come accustomed to over the years. Next up, we've got the Baltimore Ravens going into the Meadowlands and just laying it down on the Giants. The Giants are just they wish the season was over here. All they're playing for is how many catches Malik Neighbors can get. And we had 10 for 82 and a touchdown on 14 targets. Whether it's Tim Boyle, Tommy DeVito, or Brian Dable himself throwing the ball, they're going to throw it to Malik Neighbors as much as possible. I mean, 14 targets, 37 pass attempts. Now, I'm no math genius, although I think I am, but that's well over 33%. I know that for sure. That is a monster target share, and this is going to just continue. Wan'Dale Robinson did get 9 targets as well, 4 for 38. So I still wouldn't trust him in my lineups. Tyron Tracy only 10 for 31, only ended up with 1 catch for 4 yards. So a little disappointing there from Tracy. I would have thought being down this much, he would have seen more action through the air and gotten 5 or 6 catches, but I think he could bounce back next week. The Giants are heading to Atlanta, and so I think it could be possibly more of the same. You don't know with Penix coming in. Who's to say? I mean, again, things couldn't be worse for the Falcons offense right now. So wouldn't be shocked if he comes in and lights it up. That's Penix. I mean, on the other side, we had Lamar Jackson just doing what he's done all season and just airing it out like a madman. 290 yards through the air, 5 touchdowns this week, 2 of them to Rashad Bateman, finished with 3 catches for 80 yards on 5 targets. You got Justin Hill getting into the end zone. Mark Andrews, Tez Walker. I think he ran 3 routes on the day, and those were his first routes of the season and caught a touchdown. I don't think any of you had him on your bingo card, but who knows? Maybe he was sitting on the bottom of your best ball bench there. Mark Andrews, just 2 for 24, but did get into the end zone, so saved his day there with that. Isaiah Likely only 2 for 17, and Zay Flowers 6 for 53. So Zay Here's where it gets interesting with Zay. I mean, I've been starting him regularly now. Like if I had Malik Neighbors and Zay Flowers, I'd be starting Neighbors. Okay. Just the target share is more concentrated to Neighbors. And so I feel more confident with him, even though Flowers has a better chance of getting into the end zone on a weekly basis. I think that Neighbors' volume will outlast Flowers. So Flowers, I would put him in the wide receiver 2, 3 conversation there. Kind of depends on what your wide receiver core looks like. Um, but Derrick Henry, don't worry. That's all I gotta say. He is traditionally a great December back, so he can easily bounce back in a game against the Steelers where I'm sure they will try and establish him early and often. All right. So that in the second half, he can dominate. But it is the Steelers D. So I don't know. Either way, you're starting Henry regardless. You're not going to be benching him at this point. So you just got to plug him in and hope for a better week this week. All right. Next up, we're going to head to Carolina. Check out Cowboys and Cooper Rush. It's probably his best game as a pro. 18 to 29, 214, but 3 touchdowns as the Cowboys get the win 30 to 14 over the Panthers. Bit of a step back here for the Panthers offense. Again, we mentioned Xavier Legette's injury. Jalen Coker, though, stepped it up. Oh, he had 110 yards, not just 90. So Coker looking good. Possible flex option. Thielen, I would start in my flex and feel pretty good about it. He went 5 for 51. But I think they could bounce back with a little better week next week. The Panthers are staying home to take on the Cardinals. So Cardinals are, of course, one of the most unpredictable teams week to week. Their defense looked good last week. So we'll see. But I think they're going to have to be throwing it, the Panthers, that is. And so Chuba Hubbard, with the volume that he gets, I think that we have better days ahead with Jonathan Brooks's season-ending injury. So just 10 for 32 this week. I would expect Chuba to do better and bounce back against the Cardinals next week. Now for the Cowboys, Rico Dowdle, look at this, 25 for 149. Didn't do anything through the air though. And so without the touchdown, it was more of a pedestrian-like RB2 solid day at the office for Dowdle. This week he'll be taking on where are the Cowboys? Yes, they'll be hosting Tampa. Jeez, I can't remember. I believe I forgot. Yes, Sunday night football. It'll be Tampa in Big D. So should be it's a big game. Like the Cowboys glimmering playoff hopes are on the line here as they sit at 6-8. Tampa trying to stay on top of the division in the NFC South at 8-6. So we'll see what happens in the Falcons game earlier. See what that means for the Bucks. All right. But CeeDee Lamb looking good, 9 for 116 on 13 targets. So Cooper Rush getting into the groove. And that starts with CeeDee. He didn't hit Jake Ferguson too much this week, but I wouldn't be too worried about that. I think that Ferguson is still the second best option there for the Cowboys. So I'd still start him without worries. All right. Next up, we'll look at the Jets Jaguars. Oh, and this one was all Brian Thomas. Then the second half, it was Devontae Adams just going bonkers. 9 for 198, 2 touchdowns at 1/2. Literally winning weeks for you all out there, whoever owns Devontae Adams and was in the playoffs. You're totally happy. You got what you were hoping for when Adams got traded midseason to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers showing up out of nowhere. 289 and 3 touchdowns, got to 30 or 40 points for you, depending on the scoring system. He added 45 yards rushing on the ground somehow. Brees Hall did get into the end zone, aside from an ugly day. Otherwise, only 51 total yards, 2 catches, but did get the touchdown, so kind of saved his day there. Um, yeah, Garrett Wilson did get in the end zone as well, 3 for 56, in spite of all the targets going to Adams there in the second half. As for the Jaguars, well, he had 46 pass attempts, so somebody had to catch those, right? And they went to Brian Thomas and Brenton Strange. Brenton Strange. So those of you who picked up Strange because of some tight end injuries, maybe at Ingram, maybe at somebody else, but Ingram's on IR, so you can look at Brenton Strange for sure on waivers this week, if you've got injuries at tight end, or like I said, playing defense. Look at your opponent's tight end, and it's not a bad option there. Parker Washington just 3 for 54, so he's a bottom borderline flex play desperation. I wouldn't be too ecstatic over. And the Jaguars rush game is just kind of meh right now. Weekly, it's hard to trust any of them, but the Jags do get the Raiders this week, so wouldn't mind if you have to plugging one of those Jaguars running backs in. Could be a sneaky play there. All right. Next up, we will step into just got a few more games here. Let's check out the Dolphins Texans. So here we have Tua just not getting her done. For those of you who had Tua, fortunately, spent most of the afternoon in the negative. Most leagues he did sneak into the positive later on with that touchdown he had to Jonnu. Jonnu with another monster game, 9 for 48 on 11 targets with the touchdown. Malik Washington, 5 for 52. Now he could be a sneaky play in a deeper league with Waddle's injury. Tyreek not getting it done. 2 for 36 this week. Dolphins take on the Niners this week, so decent defense, and the Dolphins fast fading playoff hopes there on the line. Both of these teams, this is basically an elimination game, even though their playoff chances are probably both under 5%. But Bucks, man, up 19 now on the Thunder. Man, they want that 500,000 each. Can't blame them. All right. So yeah, the with Tua, man, if you got to play him, you got to play him. But there's other options out there. Definitely consider them the way he's been looking. Um, Now, Achan, definite start with all the volume. He gets 7 catches for 35 yards, only 41 yards on the ground, but still, with the target volume there for Achan, got to plug him in. Absolutely. Now, over to the Texans. CJ Stroud with a decent game, only 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, both to Nico Collins, saving his day. He only had 4 catches for 17 yards, but count them, 2 touchdowns for Nico. So he continues to be an absolute must start. Tank Dell, nothing going on. Joe Mixon, this wasn't his best day of the season. We'll say that. As was the case with Saquon owners and Henry owners and Jonathan Taylor owners, Joe Mixon, who surprisingly somehow Jonathan Taylor actually outperformed all 3 of those other guys, even though he didn't feel like getting the touchdown. But I would think Mixon can bounce back in Kansas City. They're going to try and feed him early and often, try and take control of that matchup, regardless of whether Mahomes or Wentz is at the helm. So I feel good about the Texans in this matchup for some reason. All right. Next up, we've got yeah, let's check out that one. All right. Snuck Jonathan Taylor, and I'm dropping the ball in there on the thumbnail for good reason because I mean, is there anything more crushing than if you lost because of that Jonathan Taylor non-touchdown? I just don't get it. Like, score the touchdown, guys. Like, how does this continue to happen? These guys are playing football their whole lives, and now they get to the big stage, and like, what is what is the deal? How is that cool to what's the thing? You want to time it perfectly so you drop the ball right when you get on the end zone? I don't get it. Just score the touchdown and toss it to the ref if you're gonna do this. I mean, honestly. Yeah, Taylor still had a decent game, 22 for 107, and then only one catch, but 107 yards, decent game. But man, that touchdown would have looked a lot better. Anthony Richardson struggled 17 of 38. Man, I don't trust any of the Colts wide receivers. Pittman was 6 for 58, and Josh Downs was 3 for 32. They're going to be taking on the Titans, who have been getting up yardage, but man, I'll start Anthony Richardson because he's going to get the rushing yards, and that's really the only reason. And you can start Taylor this week because I guarantee you he's going to be hanging onto the ball for dear life. Um, Now over to the Broncos. They won this one 31-13, but Bo Nix tried every which way to keep the Colts in this one with his 3 interceptions. Still had 3 touchdown passes, one of which to Cortland Sutton, who's been tearing it up. Only 3 for 32, though, for Sutton, so not a great matchup. I'd still feel pretty confident starting him, though. Adam Troutman caught one, and Nate Atkins as well, showing up in the box score here. As for the Broncos running backs, just yeah. If you got to play a Broncos running back this week, good luck. All right. Broncos are, of course, who they got. That's right. Thursday night action. Broncos at Chargers should be a good one. That's big game in the AFC West there. I don't obviously neither of them can overtake the Chiefs, but a Broncos win would put the Chargers in trouble of losing their playoff spot. Right now they're hanging on. They're 2 games ahead of the Colts and Dolphins and Bengals. They do have the tiebreaker with the Bengals. Not sure the other 2 teams, but a loss here for the Chargers could make things interesting as the Bengals, Dolphins, and Colts all have winnable games this week. They're probably all favored to win their matchups. So this could tighten things up. Now, a Chargers win, and they're back in the driver's seat for a playoff spot in the AFC. Right. Just a couple more games here. We'll get to probably the biggest game of the week here. Yes. Okay. All right. As I mentioned, the Monty injury earlier puts a damper on the Lions' Super Bowl hopes, but I have confidence in Jahmyr Gibbs that he's going to take over this show and just steamroll. The Lions will be taking on the Bears this week. Again, they just played them a couple weeks ago on Thanksgiving, so they'll head into Soldier Field all banged up. This could be a high scoring one. The over under is set at 48 right now. So expect Goff and Gibbs to both perform well. Amon Ra, man, whew, 14 for 193 and a touchdown in this one. Laporta getting it done the last few weeks. He has all those who drafted him as the first tight end off the board are now finally reaping the benefits. Hopefully, he still made the playoffs. Uh, Tim Patrick got into the end zone again. Dan Skipper, the lineman, even got a touchdown in this one. JMO got a touchdown, 5 touchdowns on 494 for Goff. Just ridiculous. But again, the key is David Montgomery will be lost for the season now. Over to the Bills, and you've got Josh Allen with just an absolute monster again. 362 through the air, 2 touchdowns on the ground for with 68 yards. James Cook with 2 touchdowns for 105 yards. I mean, when it's 48-42, pretty much everybody here had a good game. I mean, even Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson had 5 for 114. Just ridiculous game here. But for the Bills offense, the only receiver that I feel confident right now is Khalil Shakir. 6 for 39 and 1 touchdown. He's got his role solidified there. He gets guy gets 7 or 8 targets every week, catches 6 or 7 of them, gets 60 to 70 yards usually. If he gets in the end zone, great. Usually he doesn't, but he has the last couple of weeks, so that's good. But yeah, I mean the Bills are taking on the where are they? They're taking on Patriots at home. So watch the weather there. It's Buffalo. Things get goofy there. But otherwise, start your Bills with confidence. All right. Let's see here. Okay. We're going to head over to Philly next. And this one, again, not great for Saquon. Just 65 yards on the ground. Jalen Hurts, though, listened to A.J. Brown screaming at the media and got him a touchdown, 8 for 110 for A.J. Brown. Now, key here that wasn't that big or publicized if you weren't watching the game. A.J. Brown did get hip dropped on a tackle. And so watch the news on his ankle going into the hip drop. He kind of turned his ankle bad. And so I don't know if that it's a high ankle sprain or what. He said he's okay. But monitor that. Devontae Smith got in the end zone as well, 11 for 109 for him. So both receivers just blowing up. Eagles are taking on the Commanders, as we mentioned earlier this week. So just start those main guys with confidence. Grant Calcaterra, who maybe you thought was a thing, maybe not. Maybe you thought, I don't know. I don't. If you got to start Calcaterra, go ahead. But there's other options out there too. As for the Steelers side of things, without George Pickens, it was pretty ugly offensively. I mean, look at the rushing numbers, just plus. Now the Steelers are taking on the Ravens this week, and if you remember from a couple weeks ago, this game was just back and forth, nuts. And so we'll see. If Pickens is out, I don't know. The Steelers are going to have a tough time keeping up with the Ravens. So that one, yeesh. I don't know. I don't love any Steelers here. I mean, Calvin Austin, sneaky maybe if Pickens is out, 5 for 65. Fryermuth did get in the end zone for the lone touchdown from Wilson. And Wilson just couldn't really get it going. 14 for 22, only 128 yards. So yeah, this one with the Steelers heading to Baltimore, this could be a rough week for them. Trying to hang on to their 1-game lead there in the North. Okay, huge game, real football wise. Okay, we'll head down to Arizona, check out the Cardinals Patriots game here. Drake May still putting up the numbers, finding a way. Again, the rushing touchdown saved him. Otherwise, he had 202, 1 touchdown, 1 pick through the air. Nobody real pertinent for The Patriots receivers, again, you can start Hunter Henry. Otherwise, I'm avoiding it. Kyler Murray, nothing spectacular this week. 224 through the air, just 11 yards rushing. So another kind of day for Kyler, but I mean, they are heading to Carolina. Maybe a good get right game here. This is a sneaky one, though. I mean, the Panthers aren't completely terrible. There's much worse teams with 3-11 records out there. So, the Cardinals, again, it's just week to week. You never know what's going to show up. Their defense, though, did play well against the Patriots. So, James Conner, I feel confident in. Definitely monster performance this week. 110 on the ground, 2 touchdowns, added 5 for 28 through the air. So just the James Conner show all day, all long. Marv, 2 for 32. Trey McBride doing what Trey McBride does, 10 targets, 9 catches, 87 yards. I mean, I think he's had this exact stat line like 5 times this year. I don't know. Anyway, yes, that means you can continue to start Trey McBride. But Marv, I don't blame you if you bench him. There's a lot of options out there right now. Okay, we'll head into the Sunday night action before we talk about Monday night's games. We had the Packers dude, this was the Josh Jacobs show from the coin toss. From the coin toss on. Packers won the coin toss, decided to take the ball, and slam Josh Jacobs down their throats. Jacobs had 9 of the 11 touches on the opening drive. Finished the day 26 for 94, just 3.6, but it was the continuous pounding that Josh Jacobs did that won this game for the Packers. He got 1 touchdown. Jordan Love threw 2 touchdowns, both to Romeo Doubs. So Christian Watson, 3 for 56. So he spread it around pretty well. There you can see Jacobs had 4 for 42 through the air. Jaden Reed, 5 for 34. But, Packers spreading it around well. They got another matchup here with the Saints that they could dominate. I would love Josh Jacobs this week, but as for the receivers, see what options you have. If you got to plug them in, sure. I would bet that one of them has a decent performance. Which one? I don't know. This week it was Romeo Doubs. Last couple of weeks it was Christian Watson. 2 months ago it was Jaden Reed every week. Now Jaden Reed's getting the short end of the stick. So, I mean, I can't tell you who it's going to be this week, but Romeo Doubs is the hot hand right now. So maybe it's him. I don't know. As for the Seahawks, again, Sam Howell had to play the whole 4th quarter, and this was one of the ugliest performances actually of all time. His 5 for 14 for 24 yards and a 14 quarterback rating. Yuck. So it's hard to say if DK is worth starting in the semifinals of the playoffs. I know I got him in a couple leagues where I'm really, really having a tough time deciding on DK. Zach Charbonnet, the well may have run dry there, as Kenny Walker might be back next week, so that's something to monitor. Now, the Seahawks are taking on the Vikings, which should be a good matchup. Now, we thought the Seahawks-Packers was going to be a good matchup too, but I can't see the Seahawks getting blown out 2 weeks in a row at home. Even if Howell is at the helm, I just feel like the Seahawks can bounce back strong this one. They need to. They're still, well, they're not on top of the division. They're tied with the Rams. Rams have the tiebreaker right now. Now they do play each other in week 18, probably to decide the division. So looking forward to that one there. All right. JSN, just keep firing him up. He's going to get targets. Don't worry about it. All right. And now to Monday night's games. And I mean, the Falcons, I can sum it up real quick here. Bijan got the rock, had a good game. Cousins was putrid in the loss, lost his job. Penix is in. I would feel confident still starting London. Um, that's about it for the Falcons. As for the Raiders, just Brock Bowers and maybe Jacoby Myers, but otherwise I'd avoid him. I think Ritter will probably get the start again, but maybe Aiden McConnell will be ready. That's another uh, borderline quarterback thing. Dude, if you got to start Desmond Ritter in a semifinal, oh man. I laugh now, but I won a league last year with Easton Stick and Sam Howell in my starting lineup. So if you got to start him, you got to start him. It's a body. There's injuries; they happen all the time. And finally, the other Monday night game had the Vikings defeating the Bears as they get ready to head into Seattle. Ugh, where was it? There we go. There we go for you guys. All right. And yeah, this one, Aaron Jones had a solid performance, 86 yards and a touchdown, 2 for 20 through the air. Jefferson doing his thing, 7 for 73 and a touchdown. Addison with a decent game, 7 for 63. I would expect much more of the same. Sam Darnold still healthy, so if you got him, you probably got to play him. Um, 231 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. As for the Bears, now Caleb showed some resiliency in trying to get them uh, back in this one. He had a few drives late, getting them downfield, but couldn't get them into the end zone there. He finished 18 of 31 for 191 and a touchdown. These games are important for Caleb Williams. Want to see, especially from my perspective, I really want to see the connection between him and Rome Odunze getting better. Now Rome had 7 targets, just 2 for 39, but I like that he got 7 targets at least. He was targeting him in the red zone. Now, Keenan Allen led the way with 6 for 82 and the touchdown on 13 targets. DJ Moore 8 for 46. So kind of all right game. Now the Bears take on who is it? The Lions. Yes, the Lions. So with the Lions defense being all banged up, this one could be a fun one to watch. So DeAndre Swift, 19 for 79. He was banged up heading into this one, but didn't have a problem playing. So I expect him to be ready to go next week as well. All right. So, that is we've got for you today in the matchups from week 15. Now get ready for your matchups week 16. Hope your guys stay hot. Got them and you made it through the quarterfinals. We have the semifinals now. So feel free to ask me any questions at buymeacoffee.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. Fire away on there or on my Patreon, patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. I'm ready for your questions. I want to help you win, unless you're playing against me, because I am ready to win. That's for sure. Just make sure, get those waiver claims in and never stop working.